Peter Drucker in 1954, and he's never gone back, or he's now dead, but he never went back on it, said there's only two things that count in a business. That's marketing and innovation. Everything else is a cost. And from a marketing fundamentalist perspective, your objective in a business is to get cash out of a customer. And from a marketing fundamentalist perspective, big businesses are game for attack because of what big businesses are obsessed with. I've got a question. But what is IBM's core competence? Does anyone know? IBM. Computers, software, consulting. IBM's core competence is managing IBM. That's what they're really good at. They are really good at managing IBM. Microsoft's core competence is managing Microsoft. Ford's core competence is managing Ford. And that is where I think their weaknesses are, because structure for big companies dictates their strategy. And your strategy should never be dictated by your organisational structure. Your strategy should be dictated by your source and the only long-term source of cash, which is customers. So I wanted to talk about some of the issues around this and the concept of market driving. Big companies are market-driven. Big companies like markets to be consistent. As soon as you get somebody in who breaks the rules and delivers solutions to customers in a more effective way, big companies hit big trouble. And I'll use the music industry as an example. You know the book, Men Are From Mars, Women From Venus? It's the same in business because essentially demand is from Mars and supply is from Venus. And big businesses spend all their time focusing on the supply side, demand side, talking to customers. Big businesses really don't understand customers. You hear these chief executives all the time saying, we're going to get closer to our customers. And the first thing they do when they get closer to the customers, they strip in a level of CRM. So they buy a third-party piece of software that doesn't work. And then they outsource customer service. So they're actually putting two levels of barrier between them and the customer. They're outsourcing the people who have contact with the customer. You have to put the people who have contact with the customer at the top of the organisation because it's the customer who gives you cash. It's a subtle one. It's a very subtle one. And so we look at the demand side. Smaller businesses, if you look at the demand side, you've got a distinct advantage because the big companies are obsessed with supply side, supply efficiencies. We've got to work our supply chain to get the greatest efficiencies. It doesn't matter if the customer's buying from someone else, we're obsessed internally. So this is what I look at and we look at Henley. So the first thing to do is to show how this might work with a music test, to show how an industry loses sight of reality.
1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, rock. 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, rock.
Who's that?
9, 10, 11 o'clock.
Bill Haley and the Comets. That puts you mid-50s, 1950s. This is just a rough. I know that people, experts in the music industry, say, well, you've missed a bit here, you've missed a bit there. But essentially, what the record industry want is Millie Molly Mandy, the consumer, to buy a 7-inch piece of plastic with lines on it and a label on it from a record shop. The record shop to get it through the physical distribution channel, to get it from the disc manufacturer, which is producing a song from a singer. Because if you get a singer, Bill Haley, you get a group of musicians, the Comets, you put them together, you get a writer and a composer to write his song and do the composition, you have an engineer, a arranger, a producer, you put them all together, you get that 7-inch piece of plastic, the 7-inch piece of plastic goes all the way down, Millie Molly Mandy buys a 7-inch piece of plastic with Bill Haley and the Comets on it. For the record label, it doesn't matter, as nothing really matters as long as consumer buys here. And if they control this entire process, everything's happy. Now what they do is they say, okay, let's get some efficiencies here. We're obsessed with efficiencies. Let's look internally. So we move on a bit in music to...
If you see me walking down the street,
anybody?
and I start to cry.
Dionne Warwick. With Dionne Warwick, it's still fine because Millie Molly Mandy is buying her record from the retailer through the physical distribution channel, from the disc manufacturer, the recording studio produces a record. You've still got Dionne Warwick. the group of musicians, you've still got the engineer, you've still got the producer, but we can get some network efficiencies by having the arranger, writer, composer together, which is Hal David and Burt Bacharach. So there's a bit of efficiency there. We've got more control, because it's all about big organisations love control. So that happens, and then we move around the same time.
Try to see it my way. Do I have to keep on talking?
Beatles. Singer, musician, writer, composer, arranger of 5 people, a pack together. This piece doesn't change. We don't bother looking at the consumer, because Millie Molly Mandy still buys her CD from the record shop, because you have to buy it from a record shop, because that's what they want you to do. We get to this one. It's a great track to drive to up the M40. Anybody? Arctic Monkeys, you know the Arctic Monkeys. Now, the Arctic Monkeys suddenly make it really difficult for the record companies who, like Kodak and Polaroid, when digital suddenly hit them, say, oh, what's all that about then? Oh, where did this come from? The Arctic Monkeys, what's come out of here? Retailers suddenly disappeared. Recording studios not there, because the Arctic Monkeys, they had the fastest #1 selling single in British pop history at a time when singles were out of the market, outsold the Beatles in terms of number of songs sold in a week. They did it all themselves. They don't have the retailer. They don't have the disc and tape manufacturer. The physical distribution channel is what? Downloads. It's all off iTunes, because Millie Molly Mandy gets it off a computer, off Tinternet. Now, for the big recording studios, it gives them such a headache, because a market has been driven in a way that delivers customers things they want at the right place in the right location. And for the big players, it becomes really difficult for them to compete. So this is this concept called market driving. Now, what we do is market drivers have to think like customers. Big companies, and I spend my life dealing with big companies thinking like customers, big companies think like big companies. And if anybody here is in or has worked in a big company, you know just what I mean. They think in big company think, they don't think in customer think. What it's about is finding, instead of finding customers for products, you find products for customers. It's a different way of thinking. Most companies produce product and they desperately try and find customers for it. They're obsessed with their product that customers don't want, unless they do something to the brand and the price, and those are other issues. Customer-centric organisations find products for customers. Your key asset is the customer, and you find products and solutions for your customers. And this involves understanding the way customers buy and use products. It involves businesses looking at customers and doing something called customer activity mapping. You look at what customers do when they're deciding what to do, looking at when customers are doing something, making the purchase. That's when big businesses get involved. And then after the purchase, when a customer maintains their product, reviews, renews, updates, measures results. This is where small businesses have an advantage. You map the purchasing behaviour and you find out where you can put value in or where you can strip value out. And that's what market driving firms do. Market driving firms essentially look at activities customers go through to get an outcome in the market that you operate in. And what you should do is look at adding value. What can you do to add value, either by putting value in or taking value out? Most big businesses, in fact I say all big businesses, love to sit in this box where market structures are given and market behaviour is given. Market drivers break the rules of the game. They say, why does an industry have to be structured the way it is? Market drivers also break industry segmentation. Businesses segment markets based on what industry structure is. Companies do segmentation based on media channels. It's not based on customers. Now, if you segment on what customers actually want, you find that customers come to you more and more often. Again, using dear old iTunes, I'm 44. I like Motown, Led Zeppelin, bit of Paul Weller, Beyonce. Oh, I love Beyonce. Bit of jazz, bit of hip-hop. I have an eclectic taste in music. Now, for the music industry, for the record labels, they can never segment me because they want me to be country or heavy rock or R&B. Companies who allow customers to segment themselves deliver better value.